Hey guys, thanks for checking out this week's episode of Revealed. I know last week I told you guys that James was going to fill in for me, but that episode's turning into a bit more of a longer format, and it will probably end up in our crafted series, so be on the lookout for that in the future. So today we're gonna dig right into these screens. We've kind of teased you guys a lot about this, what we're calling the bubble screen, and we're finally starting to make some progress on these screens. So today we're going to start to veneer some of these panels, and we're really going to dig into our veneer process and kind of give you guys a detailed yet quick look at how we're going to veneer these panels. So one of the more important things in veneering is making sure that you're set up and you have all of the proper pieces and parts ready to go. Once you start veneering, it's a very fast moving process and you're not going to have time to make a few extra pieces or to make a lot of adjustments. So you really need to be ready to go. Now, if you remember from some previous episodes, we ordered a bunch of 4x8 sheets of walnut veneer. So that was what we have right here in front of us, but Ian already went ahead and trimmed these sheets closer to size. We want to make sure that our veneer panels are still a little bit oversized so we can go back and trim them once we do have them all glued up. But we don't want to have too much unnecessary material, making it more difficult to handle and using a bit more of our supplies. All of these panels are going to have a front and back side. All of the faces are all sequenced. So the 3 on each side are going to match, and the back isn't really going to be seen. So while they're all very similar veneers, they're not necessarily sequenced pieces. We want to make sure that as we're gluing these up, we're keeping these sequences correct. Even though they are individual panels, we don't want to use 2 of our face sheets as a front and back, right? We want to make sure that we're continuing to use the face sheet and the back sheet per one panel. So I went ahead and separated my pieces here. I have a back, and under that is the front. We'll come back to these in just a second, but we want to make sure we're getting our bag set up with our substrate. Since our substrate is a large piece of 3/4 MDF, we don't want to be handling it a lot. So we're going to go ahead and keep that substrate here in the bag and carry our veneers over to that substrate. Throughout this process, you want to make sure you're remaining dust-free with everything. So we're keeping the bag closed as much as possible. And now that we're ready to veneer, we'll open the bag up, dust it out, put the substrate in, dust that off, get our glue set up, get our veneers set up, and we'll start that process. So a quick rundown on how the vacuum bag works. The vacuum bag itself is just a polyurethane bag. It has a zipper to completely close it and make it airtight. There is a pump below with a hose that comes up into these 2 inlets here in the bag. This piece here is called the platen, and you'll notice that there's a series of curves cut throughout this. That's going to allow the air to be pulled out through the entire bag so we don't end up with pockets of air. This here is just a piece of melamine that we put down to help protect the workpiece. You know, because we are working with glues, this being an untreated MDF, our workpiece could stick to the platen. So this is just a little bit of a buffer. Because it's already a finished material, it's not going to stick. Our workpiece is not going to stick to it. We want to make sure that everything is dust-free and that there are no particles left on the pieces, that there's no glue. Because this is a very thin veneer, any particles that are left on the substrate will telegraph through the veneer, and you'll end up with a bump in the veneer. You could burn through and expose that substrate, which is not ideal. So I like to start with the back side of my panels first, and like we did on the substrate, I want to make sure that there's no extra dust or debris on the veneer sheets. But before I get into doing that, I want to get my glue prepped and ready so that once I have this sheet cleaned off, I'm good to go and start my glue up process. So when it comes to glues, there's a bunch of different glues on the market that you can use. I like to use a 1-part glue, and there are 2-part glues. A lot of the times you would use a 2-part glue if you're working with, let's say, a lighter veneer where darker glue is going to kind of show through that piece, or vice versa if you're working with darker pieces and the lighter glue will show through. Here we're working with backed veneers, And what that is just a thin layer of paper backing on the backside of the raw wood veneer, which helps prevent any of that discoloration from coming through. It also helps keep that wood veneer together, similar to how it would be if we were just using raw veneers with tape. Even though this is a one-part glue, what I like to do is empty this out into a container and just give it a quick stir to make sure that I am utilizing both of the parts that are in here. Once I have all the liquid poured out into that can, this is where things get a little bit messier. What I like to do is actually cut the top part of this container right off and scrape out all the extra sediment so that I'm making sure I get the proper mixture. It's in the bottom here is where most of that sediment really lies. You can see this is what we want to make sure that we're getting into that mixture for the proper ratios. Now that I have my glue mixed up, I'm going to pour it into a paint tray so I can use a roller to apply it. And I'm actually just using a very inexpensive foam roller to apply the glue. Since we're going to go through quite a few of these throughout the process, I like to use something that isn't going to absorb too much of the glue and that isn't super expensive, so I can just throw it away afterwards. So now we're going to want to go ahead and pour the glue into our tray, dust off our veneer. And then we're good to roll out the glue for the back. We're going to apply the glue to both the veneer sheet and the substrate, and then we're going to repeat that process for the front. So now that we have both our front and back faces veneered, glued up, ready to go, we're not just going to close up the bag and turn the machine on. We actually want to put another piece of melamine on top of this. That's going to make sure that this entire thing is nice and flat, that there's no air bubbles. One other really important step with this top sheet is you want to make sure that you're breaking the edges. Any of these sharp corners could actually puncture the bag, and then you're going to be in a lot of trouble where you might need to replace the bag or repair it. And if you can't do so fast enough while your piece is in there, the piece might be going to waste. When we do cut these top sheets to size, we want it to overhang the substrate just a little bit all around. That way we have full coverage. We don't want to make it too much, or else the pressure of the bag can actually break the top sheet, causing some issues and potentially puncturing the bag. But with our top sheet on, we are ready to close up the bag and turn the pump on. So when we turn this pump on, we do just want to make sure that we're helping any air bubbles escape, as well as making sure that our top sheet is covering the substrate. Because of the pressure in this bag, it does sometimes want to shift on you. So just make sure that you're keeping these in place and not moving around too much. The old James dad slap, you know? So now that we have the first one in the bag and ready, we actually have 6 total to do. So we'll have 5 more glue ups. Once they're all glued up, they're going to go over to our CNC where they'll actually cut in all of those circles. And the CNC shop's just up the road. But if you come with me, so we actually do have a couple of them back from CNC. As you can see here, these ones are ready to get cleaned off and start to be edge banded. We will cover that, how they're cut, and the next steps in the next episode. Thanks so much for tuning into this one. As always, please subscribe, leave us comments, let us know if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.